Hi. So today we are going to talk about assignment 2, which is the editorial portrait. Again, I am recording this from my home. So if you hear a dog yelping in the background, I am not torturing my dog. It is my neighbor's dog, Max, wigging out. So let's get into the assignment. The editorial portrait is simply the idea of telling the story with photographs that goes along with the words in the magazine or the book. Our approach to this assignment can take one of three lanes. There's lane number one, and these lanes go in any order. It doesn't have to be one, two, or three. But just for argument's sake, lane number one is you are doing portraits that speak about an author, a TV writer, a speech writer, um, a politician, anything like that. It can take that kind of lane, which is the kind of thing, when I first got out of art school, this is the kind of thing I did for 2 years for the LA Times. I shot editorial portraits and I got to shoot. I did it for more than 2 years now that I think about it. But anyway, I got to shoot all kinds of portraits of all kinds of different people. So when I first started, I would shoot a lot of cooks and people that ran restaurants because I would do editorial portraits for the restaurant review that appeared in the LA Times magazine. After a while, I got tired of shooting, cooks and waiters and restaurants. And I asked the editor at the time, a woman named Nancy Iakwai, said, Nancy, I am really tired of restaurants. Can I shoot other stuff? And so then I moved into shooting politicians. And at that time, I was also shooting musicians for a couple of different magazines. I was shooting for Rolling Stone. I was shooting not a ton of stuff for Rolling Stone, but a few things here and there. Shooting for Rolling Stone, a couple of things for Entertainment Weekly, and most of my stuff at that time was shooting for rap pages. Go figure. A black guy, he must like rap. Let him shoot the rap stuff. Anyway, um, that's what I was doing, and I liked shooting editorial portraits because it allowed for a good amount of creativity. It allowed me to, really work with some interesting ideas, um, or play with some goofy ideas. Like I got an assignment to shoot an actor at the time named Lorenz Tate, and I decided to photograph him on Skid Row. Only because at the time I'd driven around Skid Row, and that's the older part of LA, and there was something about the architecture which reminded me a lot of New York. It felt at the time Skid Row just didn't feel like a part of LA. A lot of the architecture just harkened back to an older city. So I shot him. I photographed him in Skid Row just because I liked the way the place looked, and the shots came out cool. It was an interesting shoot and all that sort of stuff. Um, and so that's what I liked about editorial photography. Like a lot of times I would do images that kind of worked with the words of the story if I got a chance to read the story. And then sometimes I just got the assignment with no chance to read the story. And then there were times when I was really limited to what I could do for the photograph. Like one time, well, this happened twice, but one time I got an assignment to photograph a guy whose nickname was Big Evil. Big Evil was called Big Evil because he was a big guy, but the evil part was because he was a gang member of a gang in San Pedro. I can't remember, whether they were Crips or Bloods or just the San Pedro boys or whatever. But Big Evil was um, on death row. He had been tried and found guilty and um, was a part of the killing or um, ordered the killing. So he was either a part of or ordered the killing of 18 different people. Had to go to death row, which is the prison over by not Knox. It's by Magic Mountain, and photograph him there. There's a prison over there. It's where they hold people that are on death row, and we do have a death row in California. In California, I can't remember the last time someone was executed on that death row, but we do have one. And Big Evil was being held there. It's run by the deputy sheriff. They run all the prisons. And so when I went there, before I left to go shoot that morning, I didn't know what I would be running into, like what I could take in with me or anything like that. They had already said I couldn't take in any lights. I couldn't take a tripod. So I had my camera, my trusty Hasselblad, with an 80 millimeter lens, some film that was, I think, either 400 or 800 ISO 120 film. Um, and I went in, and when I got there, before I went, I decided to put on a black shirt and a black pair of pants. I'm not sure exactly why I thought black, but for some reason I thought I need to be wearing black. And when I got there, I realized why, because instinctively I thought, I bet they won't allow me to actually be in the same room as this guy. And what they did was they had me in the room, but it was in a visiting room. So there was glass separating us. And the guy comes in, Big Evil comes into the other side of the room. He sits down. We chat for a few minutes. And Big Evil turns out to be one of the most polite people I've ever met in my life. He seemed like a really nice guy, except for the killing of people thing. Um, but we chatted for a few minutes, then I proceeded to photograph him. And the reason it was a good idea that I wore this black outfit was because I didn't reflect in the glass as I was shooting him. I shot, I think, 2 rolls of film, 1 roll of color, 1 roll of black and white. And then they said, okay, are you done? And at that point I thought, well, I guess I am. And I left. And that was my moment of photographing Big Evil. The photos came out, I wasn't sure what I would get out of that space. But they came out quite compelling, quite interesting. And they ran with the story, and it made for a good story. It made for a good coupling of my photographs in this story. And I always found shooting editorial portraits to be, really interesting in some way. Sometimes I could, go scout a location and come up with, you know, my own ideas for how it would work. And then sometimes I just didn't have that opportunity. I couldn't scout or do anything. I just had to make it work with what was at hand. So, for this, I want you to, there are 3 ways to think of this. I'm going to say it, but I'm also going to write it up so that when you look at this thing, you remember, you have the 3 ways in front of you. First way is you're doing a story, let's say, for LA Times. So you're shooting a politician, or you're shooting you're shooting some kid that's a new celebrity or something like that. Okay. Um, and for that, you would turn in 2 to 3 shots. You would turn in the shot that would be the cover shot, you know. Um, you would turn in the shot that would be the lead story shot. So there's a cover of the magazine, or the cover of the web page, or the cover of the story on, on the interwebs, however you want to think of it. But I always find it easy to think of it magazine wise, I guess, because I'm an old dude and I'm showing my ears. But you have the cover of the magazine, you have the lead shot that goes with the story, and you have a supplemental shot in the story. The other thing you can do is create an editorial that's a narrative. And for that, you put together a narrative that runs no more than 5 images. And image 1 through 5 takes us through some kind of story. Or make that 6. So you run 6 images, and image 1 through 6 leads us through a story. Or the third way is you're creating images for CD packaging and or promotional packaging for a musician of some sort. It could be a musician, it could be a duo, it could be a band, whatever you want that to be. But it is images that are geared to uh, some kind of music. It is geared to, you know, publicity for the download, or back in the old days, publicity for the CD packaging, and then the other publicity. And for that, again, you would put together something. You would put together no more than 6 images, and no less than 6 images. So if you choose to go with the music idea or the editorial narrative idea, then you're on the hook for 6 images. If you choose to go with the politician, the story idea, then you're on the hook for 3 images. No more, no less. Okay? So that's the beginning parameters of the editorial portrait assignment. 3 lanes, you choose a lane, you commit to that lane, and you go down that lane. Again, before you pick up the camera and take any photographs, you will submit a proposal and tell me what you're going to do and where you're going to shoot it and how you're going to shoot it. And then I will in turn send you back some info that will help you do this. I don't want anyone just going off and shooting images before we talk about what you do, because you come up with ideas, I talk to you about those ideas. This is not a controlling thing. This is a thing where I want you to succeed. And I want you to understand that photography is a thoughtful process. You're not in this class, you're not taking pictures. Taking pictures is what, your Aunt Martha does. You are making photographs. You're deciding what you're doing, when you're doing it, and how you're doing it. And you're deciding you're doing it to achieve these measured reasons, these measured outcomes, I should say, not reasons, but these measured outcomes. And so when you talk, when you articulate prior to shooting, when you articulate your idea in a statement to me, and then I give you feedback on said statement, then I expect you to go out and achieve a more interesting photograph. Okay? So that's why I'm asking you to create a statement. And I need you to adhere to that idea because this is why you take a class. Got it? So now I've got some images to show you some things that I've played with, and I'll go through and show you some different ways. Once I shoot the images, I then worked with them in Lightroom and or Photoshop to create the final image that I want. Um, I fully believe in using Lightroom and Photoshop to, look at what you've done, look at the original thing, and then somehow, maneuver that, massage it, make something else out of it. So what I've got is I did three different photo shoots for this idea. Well, I did actually four shoots, but I'm only going to show you three of them here. So first shoot is um, I photographed this young lady, Clark, who I've been photographing since she was a little kid. She is the daughter of a friend of mine, and I've been photographing her since she was a baby, and she is all of 13 now, and very tall, rangy kid. I think she's about 5'10" at 13. So she's got really long arms and just a tall person. And I use that in some of the pictures to play, to work with. So I wanted to shoot Clark. I shot Clark and her friend China for these photos, and you'll see China in a minute. So this is Clark. Then one of the other people that I shot is Elena, and Elena is an artist and a poet and a young woman that's figuring out her life and wants to be a designer or something like that. She isn't quite sure what she wants to be. Um, and then this is young China. She's Clark's friend. When they were kids, they were friends, but now they're 13 and they've kind of drifted apart as friends, but they live next door to each other. Um, they're both the same age. They're both young 13-year-olds, and it's interesting to watch them grow up. So when I shot Clark, I shot China too. And I shot them in the same places to play the ideas off of each other just to see how it would work. So that's China. Uh, Elena. I shot Elena in three different outfits, I think, and in three different locations. China and Clark didn't change up. I didn't ask them to change their clothing. China, I didn't ask her to change her clothing at all. But I just shot her in different locations and played with different ideas of composition. So like this photograph is in the garage, and I want to use the garage because it was a really great source of open shade, meaning that it's shade, but you can see sunlight on either side. And so I wanted the shade to cover her completely, but I wanted the background in this situation to blow out. And then I wanted to use the car as a part of said background. Uh, Elena, I shot Elena on Terminal Island, and I just shot her in open spaces, open shade, um, some doorways. For you guys that don't know or have never been over to Terminal Island, it's a really interesting place to take someone and photograph them. It's got a ton of open space. Some of these really old buildings. Um, it's just a really interesting place to shoot. Problem with Terminal Island is that because it's an open space, and because there isn't a lot of people around there, the people that are there are very protective of it. So when they see anyone that they don't recognize, or if they see anyone taking pictures or doing anything a little different, a lot of times they're quick to call the cops. Um, Sometimes you'll get a cool cop, sometimes you won't. And the cops will tell you some BS about you needing a permit to shoot over there because it's private property and all that sort of stuff. And it's kind of all BS. You can go over there, do some shooting. You just got to be alert to what's around you and how people are moving and that sort of stuff. So here's more of Elena. And so, like I said, shot her in, I think, three different outfits in three or four different locations on the island, trying to achieve a couple of different ideas. Also used a couple of different lenses. So this is a 24 millimeter um, lens that I can do this soft focus thing with or take it off of the soft focus. This is in a doorway. Let me show you the doorway. I pull back and use the space. I pull back and use the space completely. So in this one, in these two, I just pull in tightly on the doorway. And then in this one, I allow you to see the complete space. In the editorial portrait, I work with ideas in a bunch of different ways. I um, play with the composition in such a way that I'm doing, like in this shot, I'm doing things that I will often tell you not to do, but because it's an editorial portrait, I can get away with it. So in this situation, I'm shooting from a low angle. We look up her nose. We've got a profile that is a complete straight profile. Usually I'll tell you to turn the person's head a bit more, like a three-quarter thing, so you see. Usually I'll tell you to turn the person's head so you see the other eyebrow, um, and don't do this sort of thing. But as I said, it's an editorial portrait, so we can play with some ideas. This particular shot, I shot this using a pinhole covering for the camera. So it's a pinhole lens, I should say, and that gives me this really soft kind of feel to the image. It's soft focus because it's just a piece of tin, a little piece of metal on um, a cap that then I put on the 5D and boom, I can shoot these really soft images. And it's got these little artifacts that I will get rid of. Um, this one takes the editorial idea a bit far because now you're not seeing the subject's face at all. Or I'm sorry, you're seeing the subject's face, but the eyes are covered. But you can play with this kind of idea editorially. Still working with the soft focus. And then these are pictures of um, a friend, Duke, and his sons. And I shot Duke and his sons because, I thought they would make for an interesting editorial setup. And the story with them is that Duke has adopted both of his sons. So I think that his nickname is Buttons. And when I photograph kids, I try not to photograph them. I really work hard not to photograph them so they look cute and precocious in such a way that they look like actual people. not cute little precocious things, or little precocious possessions. I wouldn't use, I don't know that I would use this shot, but I like it because this is the other son. His name is Asher, and Asher is autistic. So it's very um, interesting trying to photograph him because he's really sensitive to light. And so you really have to work with him to get the photograph to work correctly. But when you do, it's a cool thing. And so with Asher, I played with focus quite a bit, and I played with just mood as far as the photograph goes. And then this is Mr. Duke himself. I took this photographic panel, this reflective panel, I should say, not photographic, but this reflective panel, and I put it up behind him, using it as a background. And then when I do the image, I'm going to get rid of this vignetting and just make the whole thing a white background and get rid of some of these lines in his forehead and change around some things in the picture so we have a completely different kind of image by the time I'm done with it. We could do the same thing here, and I'll show you a bunch of ideas, a bunch of ways I played with this. This, I like this image a lot, and I just thought, as soon as I looked at it, I thought, oh, I'm going to make this black and white. So I'll make this black and white, and I'll show you just a different way of looking at this thing. Like, for me, when I shoot an image, and it's this way for everybody, I mean, I'm not telling you anything that's uniquely Neil France or any of that crap. But for me, when I look at the image, and this is why I want you to think of an editorial idea. When I look at the image out of the camera, that's my jump off point. That is my point where I'm like, oh, okay, here's something interesting. Now, what can we do with this? Um, Again, another image that you can play with in a bunch of different ways. Same here. And then this is Duke and the boys in front of the house. The American Dream. Again, Miss Clark. And, now you get to see what I was talking about. She's just a tall, kind of rangy person. And so I play with that in some of the photographs too. And in these, I work with the lines. This is in the backyard of the house. So I work with both in photographs I did with Clark and her friend China. I work with the lines of the space. And so, I make them, and in a couple I shot them together. And China is interesting because her expressions don't vary a lot. But she is a beautiful young lady to photograph. And so these are the shots that we have to work with. Let's get started on how I want you to think about the assemblage of this all. So let's say you've selected to do idea number one, and we're going to say young Miss Clark here is the author of a new book on being a teenager, being a young teenager. And we are going to create her book cover and some promo material. We're going to create some stuff for her. So I'm at this image, and let's look at this image and see what we could do with it and how we could make it more interesting. So we're in the library module. We're in Lightroom. We click on Develop, and we go into the Develop module. And the first thing that I would do with this shot, when I shot it, I thought this whole space would be a good idea or an interesting idea. But now that I look at it, I'm not crazy about the whole space. This whole part of the space is just annoying to me. So let's do some cropping. We'll crop in and we'll get rid of that. Okay. New space, old space. Okay. So let's go back to new space. So we're going to crop in right about there. Okay. First thing we're going to do. Then I'm thinking, let's bring up the exposure a bit, because that's just a bit down too much. Let's bring up, and we bring up the contrast to keep the tone in the image rich. Okay? That's why we bring up the contrast. We bring down the highlights because in the background, the highlights are just blowing way out too much. And so I'm going to bring that down a bit so that it isn't as crazy. Because when the highlights are like this, there's no form or anything to the background. So we want a little bit of form. We want to keep it in reality a bit. Then I'm going to look it over, and I could I could clone out some of these little spots, like right here on her cheek. Could clone out that little bit of discoloration, that little darker spot. We can clone out these pimples and get rid of those. She's got a birthmark on her eye. She's got this little mole right here. Let's get rid of the little mole. Okay? Down on the cheek, there's another little mark. On the chin, there's a little zit. So we get rid of those things. Let's see how it looks. Looks okay. I'm going to take it into Photoshop. Go Command E. Okay, so we bring the image up a bit. And let's... Okay, and we're going to go... We've got the spot healing brush going, and we're going to bring up the brush just a bit. It's soft. We're going to just get rid of a couple of little things here that just don't help the image at all. And just get rid of those simple little things that do nothing for us. I'm going to leave the birthmark throughout these. I think it's fine to just leave that alone. And just get rid of a few of these small things here. So here we are in Lightroom. This is the original. This is our new copy that we've got, right? And so I'm thinking that what we're going to do here is, I like the color image, but I also like the idea of working with a black and white. So I'm going to export just the color image. Well, before I export it, I'm going to play with the color a bit. So I could either use one of their presets in Lightroom. So I like this desaturated contrasts that they have. And what I usually do with that is start out with the desaturated and then work in some little differences about it. So one of the things that I do is I bring up the contrast, and that really makes the whites white and the blacks black. Now, in bringing up this white, it does an odd thing to her eye where you lose the pupil. See, as you go darker, you lose the pupil because this is what it looks like normally. This is what we go with when we bring the contrast up. I like that, and I'll bring the clarity up a bit. Now, again, this is an editorial, so you can play with this a bit more. Now, I'm not sure at this moment if this will be the cover shot. Um, and there's this weird thing as I play with the clarity, you can see that the skin gets a bit splotchy, so I'm not crazy about that. I will go back and try a cooler light or turquoise, soft mist, no. No. Warm, no. Flat green, no. Red, no. None of those other presets are really giving me anything that I'm interested in. So I'll stay with the desaturated. And then I'll export that. I'm going to export, go File, Export. I've created a folder on my desktop that I'm just calling Ed for Editorial Portrait. And as you work through this, I want you to save what you're doing to this Editorial Portrait folder that you've created on your desktop. And you'll see why in a bit. So I'm going to choose, I'm going to go to desktop, there's Ed, and choose Ed. And then before I export, I'm going to make sure I've got my sizes. For right now, I've got this 10 by 10, resolution's 300 pixels per inch. You'll see why in a bit, but I want you to do that. It's JPEG, it's color space sRGB, quality is 100, size is whatever you want to put down here. For right now, I'm doing 10 by 10 because I've made this into a square, and the resolution is pixels per inch, 300 pixels per inch. And I'm going to hit export on that. And it exports. And then after that exports, I'm going to go back and try some of the black and white presets. So like the high contrast, well, there's landscape, high contrast, there's punch. And punch is just what it says. It just gives you an interesting punch to the contrast. There's low contrast, flat, soft. Soft does something kind of interesting. Infrared, also, it gives this very ethereal look. So let's make one with infrared. And in infrared, I'm going to bring up the contrast just a little more. I'm going to make the blacks a little stronger in infrared. And okay, that's cool. And I'm just going to hit Shift Command E. That's the shortcut. Instead of, dragging down, Shift Command E, hit Return, and export that. But you're going to have to use a unique name because you've already got that file existing in Ed. So you hit Use a Unique Name so you can use the same file without renaming it or anything like that. Okay, that makes sense. So we've got two images of that. I'm going to now move on to something else of Clark. I liked this image of her, and I liked, that's Clark in China. I like that, I like that one, and I like this one. So, I don't know where this is gonna fit, but let's go with this one. So already we can see that the highlights around her are a bit too hot. So we're not gonna change the exposure because the exposure let's see what it looks like if we lighten it up a bit. We bring it up just a tad. Um, we change the contrast just a tad. Now we go to highlights and we bring that all the way down right away. And you can see, like, this is what it looks like before. So you see this part of the hoodie, this part is washed out. We bring the highlights all the way over, less washout, and then we bring the whites over too, and that cuts down on some of the washout of the hoodie. All right? When you're shooting people and you're shooting them outside in the hot sun, like this is around 11 in the daytime, 11 close to 12, um, you want to set it up so whatever you can do to keep their face out of the blaring sun, you do. Because the sun's coming down, it's hitting the top of the hoodie, it's blowing it out. If it was hitting her face, you would catch shadows under her eyes, and you would catch a shadow under her nose, and most likely under her chin. And it doesn't usually look that great, but the way it's working now, we can work with that. Next thing I'm going to do is just go straight to Photoshop, Command E, and open up in Photoshop. All right, so now we're open up in Photoshop. I'm going to add another layer. And one of the things that you can do in Photoshop is use the old Camera Raw filter. So one of the interesting things you can do in Photoshop is use Camera Raw. So we go to Camera Raw, and the way you get to Camera Raw is you go Filter, and you bring up Camera Raw. But before we bring up Camera Raw, I want you to look at the Liquify filter, because you can also do some interesting things with that. So open up Liquify. All right, so now we're in Liquify, and in Liquify, you can actually change the shape and the size of certain parts of your image. So you've got, in Liquify, you've got the face of aware part of Liquify. You know, usually when you go to Liquify, it'll look like this. So you just simply click on face aware, and now you can actually change the eye size, the eye height, the eye width, the eye tilt, and do some interesting things with your subject. Now, anytime you photograph someone, you can even change the size of the face. And I'll show you how all that works. Anytime you photograph someone, you've got to know that everybody's got this. One of their eyes is going to be lazy or a different size or something. You know, nobody's got the perfect face. And if they have the perfect face, most likely they're a supermodel on somebody's runway. But what you can do with Liquify is some pretty interesting stuff. So you go to Face Aware and you go to Eyes first. And by drawing these sliders, you can increase the size or decrease the size of the eye. So we're going to open this up and increase the size of this eye just a bit because of the angle of her head and just the way the lens worked. In this photo, the left eye, the left eye looks a lot bigger. So I've just increased the size of that eye just a bit, right? The height of the eye, you can change the height, so you can bring it up or bring it down. So I'm going to bring it up just a bit, just to add an interesting little bit of symmetry to both eyes. And you can change the width of the eye like that. So change the width just a little and change the tilt. You can see, there you go. So I'm going to change that just a little bit, okay? So I've changed and then you can change the distance. You can go out or go in. So we're not going to do that. We're not going to go in. So that's more back to normal. And then we take it over a little bit and change it just a tad. All right. And then you can, we're done with the eyes. You can go to the nose and you can change the height of the nose. You can stretch it out or bring it up just a little. Change the face just a little bit. And you can change the width. Bring it in, pinch it in, bring it out. So I'm just gonna pinch it in. I'm just doing this to show you how this works. I'm not saying this is something you have to do. I'm not making any comment on the size of the beautiful Miss Clark's nose or anything like that. I just want you to be aware that these are the possibilities in Liquify. And then you can do something with the mouth, like you can change the smile. You can lessen the smile or increase creating a smile, because that's what she looked like normally. Now we've added a bit of a smile. You can change the upper lip. So you see this, the lip size actually appears to change. You can change the size of the lower lip, bring it up, or increase that size. You can change the mouth, make it smaller, so pinch it, or make it wider. So let's pinch it just a bit and change the height. Okay, so there it looks like she's puckering up to kiss, which is not appropriate for a 13-year-old. So we bring it down a bit. And then face shape. You can change size of forehead or shape. So bring it up a bit, bring it down a bit. Okay, so bring it up just a bit. Change the chin height. You can bring it down a bit, bring it out a bit. You can change the jawline, make it more angular, widen the face a bit. We're going to leave that about the same. And the face width, bring it in, bring it out. Okay? These are the possibilities you can do with Liquify. There's a bunch of other stuff, but I just thought I'd make you aware of that for now. There's other things that you can do with it. Once you've done it, if you like it, cool. If you don't, you can just cancel it, because you know you're in preview. You can cancel it, or you can go, okay, I've liked that, and see now it goes and it applies to your image. All right. Now, once we've done that, and I'll show you more stuff with the raw filter that you can do as we move along. But for now, that's a part of what you do with the raw filter. Now what we're going to do is bring up the face a bit, make it a little larger. All right. And we're going to clean up a few things on her face. So she's got these little bumps that we can get rid of some of them, get rid of this line on our nose. And this is the stuff that you have to do that takes time, but I just want you to know that it is necessary to do some of this cleanup. You know, this is editorial. Unlike documentary, you need to do this in editorial, because now it's all about making the person interesting and or flawless. You're creating a standard. Now, get rid of that little beauty mark or whatever you want to call that thing, little mole, because it doesn't really serve any kind of purpose other than there. And because it's the editorial portrait, we're not going for that same kind of accuracy in the image. We are creating another image now. We're creating a, when I say another image, I mean we're actually working for some kind of pristine perfection. And so this stuff is just the nitty gritty that you gotta put in the time and clean up. Either you get someone perfect skin or you put in the time. And you do this before you do any other kind of retouching thing like frequency separation or any of that stuff. Like this is the hard work that you have to do to clean up your subject. Clean up these little spots. That's just the sun hitting the hair and on her forehead and such, hitting the little bumps, zits, whatever, and creating these little highlights to help you in no way, shape, or form. And just cleaning up like that. Okay, so you get the idea of where I'm going with that. Let's make it a little smaller. All right, cool. So that's what we want. It's not perfect, but I just want you to get the idea of where I'm going with this. So now that we've brought it down, I mean, now that we've gotten rid of some of the little zits and bumps and all that sort of stuff, but it's not perfect, and it's not perfect because I'm not going, I just want you to see what it takes to go through this. Like, so that's another image. We're going to hit save, and then we're going to go down to Lightroom. And so so in Lightroom we've got all right, so that's the original. This is the one with the additions. I was going to demonstrate a few more ideas, but then I started putting this lecture together and realized with the two demonstrations that I did that this thing was now at 53 minutes long. So I decided that I would cut it short and not do the two last demonstrations. I decided that, it's going to wind up being about 56 minutes. And I want to keep these lectures in the 40s to 50 something minutes long. And then if I have to, just break them into, but I know it's at a certain point, this becomes too long. Because, I've heard from some people, well, noticing the way that some people have talked about the statement that you have to write in the first assignment, I realized that people weren't looking at the video all the way through. And that's a problem. And I don't want that. I want you to look at the video all the way through, not because the lovely tones of my voice are something to behold, but because, it's a lecture. I'm giving you some knowledge. It helps you produce the assignment correctly. So I want you to follow that path. No need in doing something in a half-stepping kind of way and wasting your time. So I'm going to cut this short. I had this other idea that I wanted you to do, but I'm going to fold that and just say, this is it for the lecture. I will, when I put this on Canvas, I'll state, what you're going to do as far as the 3 choices for the assignment. And then I will just say when you're done with the images, upload them to Canvas. So if you do the music or the narrative idea, you're doing 6 images. If you do the straight editorial idea that you're creating something for a magazine, be a magazine most likely, or a story on the internet, there would be a cover image or a lead image, and then 2 supplemental images. So cover image that is on the front of the magazine, then the lead image for the story, and then another image for the story. All right? So it's either 3 images or 6 and 6, depending on what idea you have. Okay, that's it. Go forward. Make this assignment. Let me know if you have any questions, and I will answer them. Thank you.